Chapter 8. Gray Ghosts. Suddenly, the door to the washroom burst open. Zhenya, Katerina, and Anya, another girl from our barracks, stepped in. They nearly tripped over Julia and me. That's not a very good place to take a nap. I opened my mouth to respond, but when I turned toward Zhenya, I got the shock of my life. The person standing in front of me looked like a ghost. Zhenya was covered in a powdery soot from head to toe. Her eerily familiar smile seemed suspended in air. Julie helped me to my feet, my head still whirling with a combination of hunger, fear, and horror, and Zenya's appearance did nothing to make me feel better. "What happened to you?" I asked. "This is metal dust," she said, trying to brush a bit of it off her forearm. "I'm working on small machinery using a powder sander to smooth out the seams on newly welded pipes." She walked over to the wash trough and turned on a tap, then splashed water and bleaching powder on her face and arms. Rivulets of the dust whirled down the drain. There's no windows or fan in the room, and the dust fills the air like fog. It's so thick. Slowly, the Zhenya I knew emerged, no longer a ghost-like apparition. I helped her wash the dust from the back of her neck and the top of her scalp. It was encrusted all over the cross I had given to her, too. "It can't be good to breathe in all that metal dust," I said. "I'm sure it isn't," said Zhenya. "It's probably why there are no Germans in that room." She started coughing and ended up spitting phlegm into her hand. I could see that it was laced with streaks of gray. We were barely finished when the washroom was overrun by more workers coming back from their assignments. The smell of bleaching soap, metal powder, and sweat was bringing back my dizziness. So I got out of the building as quickly as I could, gulping in the cooler air, hoping my knees wouldn't buckle again. A long, snaking lineup had formed in front of the outhouse and washrooms. Not all the people were children. I recognized some from the morning assembly. About half looked like Zhenya, exhausted ghosts, covered head to toe with a fine gray powder. Some had soot-blackened hands and feet. Others just looked bone-tired. It took me a while to spot Luca. He was one of the gray ghosts. I caught up with him as he stood up in the lineup for the men's wash house. "You're doing metal work?" He nodded. "It's not the worst job." Making her way through the crowd of slave laborers was our warden, a sour expression on her face. She clapped her hands sharply to get our attention. "No dawdling," she shouted. "If you've finished cleaning yourselves, get back to your barracks." "Go," said Luca. "You don't want to get into trouble." I was the first to step back into Barrack 7, exhausted and hungry and sad. I sat at the edge of my bunk and looked at the room with its straw-stuffed mattresses and scratchy blankets. Such a small and mean place for 36 girls. My eyes rested on the bunk that had so briefly been Alessia's. It seemed hard to believe that I would never see her again. I looked at the neatly made beds of Daria, Katya, and Tatiana. I closed my eyes and said a silent prayer for their souls. I stretched out onto my bed and stared at the wooden bunk above me. I barely had to reach to touch it. Did they put the adults in bunks this small? Even the workers who built these bunks must have known that no one could be comfortable in them. I bundled up my blankets and pretended it was a stuffed toy, hugging it to my chest. Where was Larissa now? If I thought hard enough about it, would she be able to read my thoughts? "Larissa, Larissa, dear sister, I love you. I'll find you. Stay safe. I must have fallen asleep, chanting my wish for Larissa, because the next thing I knew, the barracks door creaked open. I sat up with a jolt. A warden's silhouette was framed in the entry. "You there, on the bed," she said to me. "Show these new girls where they should sleep." She ushered in 3 girls, then left. Their heads were freshly shaven, and their clothing stunk of the lice chemical. Each girl's outfit had a purple P stitched on a yellow diamond-shaped patch of cloth. Just last night, Alessia, Daria, Katya, and Tatiana had slept in this room with me. We had gotten up together and eaten breakfast, and they were already being replaced already? Were we really nothing more than a piece of machinery? I looked at these 3 new girls, and at first I was angry. They wore P for Polish, which meant they'd get better food than the rest of us. That was bad enough, but to take the place of our dead friends was dreadful. I wanted Alessia and the other girls back. But I studied the 3 new girls and saw the fear in their eyes. It wasn't their fault. I wasn't the first one to sleep on my bed either. We were prisoners, after all. I swallowed back my anger and held out my hand. "My name is Lita." A gangly girl with knobby wrists reached out and grasped it. "I'm Oksana," she said in Polish, shaking my hand vigorously. "This is my little sister Marta." The girl beside her stepped forward and shook my hand. Although she was Oksana's younger sister, she was an inch taller. Her eyes were a startling green, made more so from their tear-ridden rims. "I'm Natalia." The other girl thrust her hand out. She was the shortest of the 3, but she was sturdily built. "Are any of you under 12? I asked. "I'm 15, said Oksana. "Marta's 14. "And I am 14 as well," said Natalia. "That's good," I said, leading them over the beds that were now empty. "Don't say you're younger. You'll be safer if you're over 12. "We know that," said Oksana. "This isn't our first camp." I told her to have Daria's bed and gave Marta the bed that had been Katya's. Tatiana's bed would do for Natalia. I kept Alessia's bed empty. Would it stay empty? Not likely, but I couldn't bear to see a replacement girl sleep in it quite yet. The new girls were almost settled in when Zhenya walked through the door. Soon after, a stream of girls who had worked outside the camp came in as well. Zhenya got undressed, dropping her filthy blouse and skirt onto the floor. She stripped her bed and wrapped herself in her scratchy blanket. "We're taking turns washing our clothes," she said. "If you wash mine now, I'll wash yours tomorrow." She bundled up her clothing from the floor and handed it to me. I took the bundle from her. Natalia offered to wash some clothes too, so she and Ivanka, one of the older girls from the Kyiv area, stepped out the door with me. I was surprised to see that it was dark. "We have to hurry," said Ivanka. "Lights out at 7, and it's 6:30 already." When we got to the wash house, it was empty except for one stick-thin woman who looked to be older than my mother. She had the same idea as us and was busily scrubbing a bundle of colorless rags with a rock. She looked up when she heard us come in. "You must be new here," she said. "I'm Mary." We introduced ourselves to her and got down on our knees in front of the trough. Mary had plugged the drain with a bit of wood and had filled the trough with water, but there were carcasses of dead lice mixed in a bleachy scum of sweat and dirt on the surface of the water. Do you mind if I freshen the water? I asked her. I was just about to. Go ahead. We watched as the scum swirled down the drain and then sprinkled our own laundry with a liberal dose of bleaching powder. Mary handed me her rock. Better to scrub with this than your fingers, she said. I thanked her and took the rock from her hand. It was amazing all the stuff that came out of Zenya's clothing. Yet when I was finished, it looked almost as dirty as when I started. It was the best I could do. How long have you been here, Mary? I asked. I think it's been 8 months, she replied. You lose track in here after a while. Where are you from? Irpin, outside Kyiv. How were you taken? Soldiers raided our secret school, she said. They took all of us. I knew that school had been disbanded when the Nazis invaded, so secret schools had popped up everywhere. A dangerous act of resistance. Were you the teacher? I asked. A wave of surprise, then understanding passed over Mary's face. I guess I've aged, she said. I was 17 when they captured me. A whistle blew and Mary stood up. Lights out in 10 minutes, she said. You'd better hurry. She wrung out the excess water from her laundry and walked out the door. Natalia, Ivanka, and I walked quickly into the darkness, back to Barracks 7, holding our dripping bundle of clothing in front of us so we didn't get wet. But I shivered anyway in the March night air, with just a thin dress on and bare feet. All around us, other prisoners were rushing about, trying to get things done before lights out. How did you end up here? I asked Natalia. The 3 of us were at a different camp. Some of the prisoners revolted, demanding better food. Some were shot. Others were sent to different places. The 3 of us worked in the kitchen, and we were not part of the revolt, so we got off easy compared to the others. Where are you from originally? Asked Ivanka. I am from Lviv, said Natalia. The 2 girls with me, Marta and Oksana, they're from Drobych. Are you Polish or Ukrainian? I asked. I'm Polish, Marta, and Oksana are Ukrainian. At least wearing the letter P will get you better food than we do, said Ivanka. When we got back to Barracks 7, I helped Zhenya drape her blouse and skirt at the end of her row of bunks. Would they be dry by morning? Hard to know. All we had to warm the room was the body heat of 35 frightened girls and one small stove whose warmth seemed to stretch no further than 6 inches. I lay back down on my own bunk, pulled the covers over me, and tried to stop shivering. Would I ever get used to walking on the wintry ground barefoot? I was grateful that at least I was working inside in a warm place every day. Yes, every muscle in my body ached, and yes, I was tired, but I was alive. I thought of Alessia, Daria, Katya, and Tatiana. I was grateful that I had been spared, but it made me feel guilty too. They were so young, yet no one had helped them stay alive. Would someone help Larissa? I prayed that she had met up with people who could look out for her, who would treat her well until I could find her. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but hunger gnawed at my belly, and thoughts of Larissa haunted my dreams. With a sinking feeling, I realized I must have slept through supper. Can someone do me a favor tomorrow? I said to no one in particular. Please wake me up so I don't miss supper. Stiff blankets rustled, and there were a few suppressed chuckles. It's not funny, I said. I'm starving. Silly girl, said Zhenya. None of us got supper. Her words slapped me in the face. A triangle of sawdust bread and a bowl of watery turnip soup, and that was all for the entire day? No wonder Mary had aged so quickly in a matter of months.